If you can easily find and name each of the 7 different white keys and understand how the fingers are numbered, you're ready for this lesson. You can watch the entire lesson and then go back and practice each exercise, or you can stop the video along the way and learn one exercise at a time. In this lesson, you'll learn how chords are made, how to play the basic 6-note chord pattern. You'll learn how to play the 6-note C chord and the G chord, and you'll learn the correct hand position for playing the piano. Let's talk about how chords are made. A chord is simply a pattern of notes that sound good together. From lesson 1, you'll remember that all the keys on the piano were named using just the first 7 letters in the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Chords are made using these same 7 letters. Of course, we can't make a chord by playing a bunch of keys in a row, but if I play a key and then the 3rd and 5th keys above that, odd numbered keys, I have a simple chord. This is called a 1-3-5 chord and is named from the number 1 note. So the number 1 note here is C, so this would be a C chord. Using this 1-3-5 pattern, I can play simple chords anywhere on the keyboard. 1-3-5, 1-3-5, 1-3-5, 1-3-5. Every chord has to have at least 3 different notes. This basic 1-3-5 chord is called a triad, meaning 3 notes. This 1-3-5 chord is easy to learn and most people play chords this way. But there's a problem with playing chords this way. If I play a 1-3-5 chord in my left hand and a melody in my right hand, it doesn't sound very good. It sounds kind of like a beginner. And the lower you play this 3-note chord, the worse it sounds. So professionals really don't play chords this way. So what do? We do what all professionals do. Figure out why the 1-3-5 chord doesn't sound so good and then fix it. When you play the 1-3-5 chord lower on the keyboard, it's the 3 in the chord that causes the problem. The 3 doesn't sound good when you play it so close to the 1. Of course, we still need a 3 in our chord, but not this particular 3. Since this 1-3-5 pattern is repeated all the way up the keyboard, we have other options. We can still play the 1 and the 5 down here, but play the 3 up here. Let me show you how much better it sounds. Here's a 1-3-5 chord played lower on the keyboard. And here's how it sounds if you move the 3 of the chord up higher. What a difference. There's another thing professionals do to make chords sound, more professional. Instead of playing only 3 notes, they play 6 notes using both hands. This is called the basic 6-note chord. 3 notes in the left hand and 3 in the right hand. As you can see, all 6 keys are either 1s, 3s, or 5s. This 6-note pattern sounds great anywhere on the keyboard. Even way down low. Most of the chords professionals play are based on this 6-note chord pattern. Once you learn this pattern, you'll have the basis for all kinds of beautiful chords. Now I'll show you how to play the C chord using this 6-note pattern. Among your system materials, you have 4 different keyboard charts: Pattern 1, Pattern 2, Pattern 3, and Pattern 4. You can use these keyboard charts to make it easier to learn the chord patterns. For the C chord, we'll be using keyboard pattern number 1, the basic 6-note chord. As you can see, there are 6 black rectangles on this chart. This shows you where to play the 3 left-hand notes and the 3 right-hand notes. The numbers on the black rectangles show you which fingers to use when you play the pattern. Place the pattern at the back edge of the keys. Now, since we're going to be playing a C chord, we line up the first black rectangle on the left end of the chart with this C on the keyboard. This is the C below middle C. Now, using the finger numbers as a guide, place the correct fingers on the keys indicated by the black rectangles, beginning at the left, finger number 5, number 2, number 1, that's the thumb, then in the right hand, finger number 1, number 2, and number 5. That's the correct fingering for the 6-note chord. I would like you to play this pattern a few times, one key at a time, holding down each key after you play it so that when you get to the top key, you're holding down all 6 keys. Don't get discouraged if it isn't easy the first time. By holding down all 6 keys for a few seconds, you're getting used to what the pattern feels like. That'll make it easier to learn. Notice that I play as if each finger was stepping on the key. Repeat this 6-note C chord a few times. It'll get a little easier every time you play it. After you've played the pattern a few times, one key at a time, I'd like you to play all 6 keys at once, like this. This might be a little tricky at first, but it'll get easier with repetition. When we play all 6 notes at the same time, it's called a block chord. So I'd like you to play the block chord a few times. Put your fingers in position and then play all the notes at one time. Then I'd like you to practice it one note at a time and then as a block chord like this. One note at a time and then block chord. One note at a time and then block chord. Only use the chart for a few minutes at most. Before long, you'll get used to the spacing of the fingers and the feel of the chord and be able to play it without using the pattern chart. The sooner you can play without the chart, the better. However, when you're not using the pattern chart, it's not as easy to find the first key of the chord. Here's an idea that'll help. The bottom key for most of the chords you play will be between this E, below middle C, and this F below that. We'll mark this area. Cut a piece of paper, a strip about 6½ inches long, put a piece of tape at each end and then tape it behind the keys. With the right end of the strip, should be right even with this line between the E and the F, and then the bottom end of the strip should be on this line between the lower E and F. With the paper strip in place, it's easy to see where to play the first note of a chord. For instance, when I play a C chord, you notice I put my little finger on the C that's within the area of this paper strip. When I play a G chord, my little finger plays the G within the area of the paper strip. After a few weeks, you won't need the paper strip anymore. If you had to learn a different pattern for each chord, you'd be learning very, very few chords. The exciting thing about the professional chord system is that you can learn just one pattern and be able to play many chords. Let me show you what I mean. I'll take keyboard pattern number 1 again and line up the first black rectangle with C. This, of course, plays a 6-note C chord. I can also play a 6-note G chord if I just line the rectangle up with G. The chord pattern for C and G are identical. Now if I slide the chart down to F, the next white key right here, then I can play an F chord. Again, the pattern is identical. So when you learn to play the C chord using this pattern, you're really learning the G chord and the F chord at the same time. Isn't that exciting? I can play 3 different chords, but I only need to learn one pattern. Play the 6-note G chord a few times until you can play it without using the keyboard chart. Now put the keyboard chart back on the G position, line it up with G down here, and then play back and forth between the C chord and then the G chord, playing the C chord from memory. After you do that one note at a time, then you can do the same thing, playing the chords as block chords, until that becomes easy. Then, when you can, do the same thing without using the keyboard chart. C chord, G chord. C chord as a block, G chord as a block. I'd like to show you a practice idea that can speed up the process of learning the chords. The more repetition you do, the easier the chords will become. When you can play the 6-note C chord and G chord without using the keyboard chart, you can learn to play the chords in 2 positions on the keyboard. First, play the chord in the usual location on the keyboard, 1 note at a time. Remember to hold the keys down as you play. Then play the same chord beginning 8 notes higher. Your left hand little finger will start on the key the left thumb was playing. Then move back and play the chord in the first position again. Playing back and forth several times between 2 positions is a very effective way to practice. You can also practice the C chord and the G chord in 2 positions as a block chord. Before we finish this lesson, I'd like to share a few ideas about correct hand position when playing the piano. Keep the wrist and the back of the hand level. No saggy wrist, no extra high wrist, just level across the back of the wrist. Curve the fingers slightly, but not too much. As you play the chord 1 note at a time, lift each finger in a walking motion. Be sure your fingers move quite a bit as you play each key. When playing block chords, all the keys at once, the fingers should make a grabbing motion. The hands will actually move slightly upward when you do this. If your fingers aren't moving, you're not doing it right. Well, that's it for Lesson 2. You'll be ready to move on to Lesson 3 when you can easily play the 6-note C and G chords 1 key at a time and as a block chord without using the keyboard charts. Also, you can give yourself a head start by listening to the first few songs on the listening CD or audio tape. When you're ready, go ahead to Lesson 3.